Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real-live bookseller, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Hello, Los Angeles. I'm so sorry for the people behind the bookshelves. It's like you're listening to a podcast, but we're all very cozy. If you find a way to come in closer, please do. Hold on. This is going to end badly. Anyway, hello. This is amazing. I remember, can you hear me in the back? Sound-wise, we're good? Okay. I remember when my first book came out 3 years ago, I also did my very first book event at Skylight. And yeah, thank you. How many of you were there? Are there any return customers? Yeah, we have some return customers. And for some reason, even though I do a fair amount of public speaking, I was just terrified before that event. I think it's something about the existential despair of releasing your first book. And I am a little freaked out tonight, too, but I think I'll calm down in this safe, loving womb of Skylight Books with all of you today. So I want to tell you a story about where this book came from that I've never actually told publicly before. So we're debuting it here tonight. First, I'm going to take you back to before I even entered the funeral industry. I had just graduated from college, and I spent about 3 months in Europe. And I remember that I was so interested in just going to death places. And I had this book called Weird Europe, which I don't even think is still in print, but it was little blurbs like a mummified saint finger in Poland, or a group of mummified monks below a church in Italy. And this is all I wanted to do. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be great if your job was just wandering around writing about death? Like, surely that's not a real job. And fast forward to 2011, and I had just started my web series, Ask a Mortician. And if you remember anything about the reality TV show scene in 2011, it was the era of the wacky job getting a reality TV show. So if you were like an ice road trucker or a child's dance instructor, you would get your own reality TV show. So here's me, this sort of camera-ready mortician, and they were like, yes, we would like to put you on television. So I started getting email after email from people asking me if I had ever considered being on TV. But don't get too excited for my career, because most of these emails were like, okay, we're going to have you in a hearse driving around the greater LA area, and you're going to pick up men and go on dates with them to like a cemetery or a haunted insane asylum, and you'll ghost hunt with your date, and if they survive, then like maybe they get another date. And of course I say like, thanks, but no thanks. This will not be, we're not doing this. And then I get an email from a network that you have heard of. It's a name that I grew up with, and I'm not going to say it because I'm not exactly sure the legality of this, but they had their own production company, and they said, what TV show would you do if you could do anything you wanted? And I thought back to my first passion before I even entered the funeral industry and said, what if we looked at different death customs around the world? And to my surprise, they said, yeah, that's a great idea. So they fly this whole crew out, and we do a pilot, what's called a sizzle pilot, at the Templo Santa Muerte. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's on Melrose. If you don't know who Santa Muerte is, she's a Latin American saint, the saint of death, usually portrayed as a woman, and she's getting more and more acolytes all the time. I think she's up to like 12 million devotees, and she really services people who aren't always welcomed into the fold of the Catholic Church, LGBT people, sometimes a criminal element, people who feel like they can't be welcomed into the Catholic Church. So we went and shot this pilot there. We talked to Professor Sisyphus, who was the priest there, and a very fascinating man. And at first, the head of the network was like, I'm really not so sure about the whole death thing, which is totally understandable. This is primetime TV. They might not be ready for it. But we shoot this pilot, and the day comes that it's going to be presented to the head of the network. And I get a call from the producer I've been working with, and he says, you know what? They love it. They've really gotten over the whole death thing. But the head of the network thinks, when it comes down to it, no one is going to watch a show like this hosted by a woman. Ooh, thank you for the gasp. As I told you, I've never told this story publicly before, so I was worried that it would just be like, yeah, that sounds right, and no. But if you think about it, how many shows do you see hosted by women that are educational or scientific in nature? It's usually a cooking show, a dance show, or what?
Portlandia, Alan Aaron.
Okay, Portlandia. There you go. But that's co-hosting. We're going to get to the next part of this story, which is they keep going, and they decide they want to find me a male co-host for the show. And they come back, I don't know, I'm not sure, I assume it would be I'm tired at the end of the day, and he props me up with his penis or something. I don't know. But they try and find me a co-host, and they're like, oh, we can't really find anyone. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I told you, everyone, that was a possibility. Who wouldn't do it? Who's not the right person? I told you wouldn't be able to find the expert because I'm the expert. But they were not interested in that, so we parted ways, and of course I was not particularly interested in any television after that point. So jump ahead to my first book coming out, and it's a bestseller, which is wonderful, and they say, great, what's your next book? My publisher says this, and I was like, there is no next book. That was the book. I gave you the book. Yay! That was the book. And they said, no, dig deep. So I was hesitant to return to this because I had been burned before. But I decided that I wanted to do this, especially since I had now been in the funeral industry for, 8, 9, at this point, 10 years in a couple months. And I had this whole experience, and I would be looking at it through entirely new eyes. And I will say 2 things. One, there's a lot of talk about the need for more diversity in the publishing industry, and that is 100% true. But at no point was I made to feel like, as a woman, I couldn't write this book. In fact, I would be like, well, I'm going to rural Indonesia, and they weren't concerned about me. They were just like, good luck. Come back with great stories. And secondly, going to the places that I went to for this new book and seeing the people I saw and the rituals I saw, looking back on it, the idea of a swath of dude bros with cameras coming in behind me in these really sacred, beautiful moments, I think would have ruined the whole thing. And I wouldn't have gotten the stories that I got, and I wouldn't have been able to describe it in the way that I was able to do here. So I'm incredibly grateful that no one would watch a show hosted by a woman. So the thing that people keep asking me about this book is, how did you decide where to go? There's 165 countries. How did you pick the ones in the book? And the way that I would say it is I picked ones that I could have a certain kind of access, a respectful access. So access in the sense that it had to be someplace that a normal tourist couldn't go. So, for example, the burning pyres along the Ganges River in India are gorgeous, but you can just walk up to them. I don't recommend you do that, but you could. And in Bali, anytime a special type of ruler dies, they have this golden jeweled bull that's 2 stories high that they put the body in and they roll it along the main street. And at the end, they set the whole thing on fire, like Burning Man, basically. And that's also amazing, but I could just show up to that. So it had to be things that It was a very privileged access that because I knew people in the deaf community or people around the world that I would be able to go. And it also had to be respectful in the sense that I would show up and be able to go in and have an introduction. So I wasn't just this like big white girl being like, tell me about your corpses, because that would not be the vibe that I wanted for this. So I want to do 2 short readings for you, and the ones that I picked are, let's see if I can get this back in here. There we go. The ones that I picked are, I think, elucidate the 2 biggest things that we are missing from the American funeral industry, and that I would like to see returned to our own death practices. So in this first reading, I have gone to rural Indonesia, and I am here for a very unique type of festival. The morning began with the sound of a plaintive gong tolling along the village road. This announced the official start of the manene. The first mummy I saw wore 80s-style aviator sunglasses with yellow-tinted frames. Damn, I thought. That guy looks like my middle school algebra teacher. One young man stood the mummy up as another sliced into its navy blazer with a pair of scissors, cutting all the way down to his pants, revealing the torso and legs. Given that this gentleman had been dead 8 years, he was remarkably well preserved, with no obvious gashes or breaks in his flesh. 2 coffins down, another fellow hadn't been so lucky. His body was now entirely shriveled, nothing left but thin strips of dried skin over bone, held together by gold-embroidered cloth. Wearing nothing but boxer shorts and the aviators, the mummy was placed on the ground, a pillow beneath his head. An 8x10 framed portrait photo, taken during his life, sat propped next to his body. Alive, he had looked far less like my math teacher than he did today, 8 years into mummification. A group of women fell to their knees beside the man and keened, wailing his name and stroking his cheeks. When their wails softened, the man's son moved in with a set of paintbrushes, the kind you'd buy at a local hardware store. The son began to clean the corpse, brushing his father's leathery skin with short, loving strokes. A cockroach scampered out from inside the boxer shorts. The son didn't seem to mind and carried on brushing. This was mourning as I had never seen it before. 10 minutes earlier, our guide had received a call that there were mummies being unwrapped at a hard-to-reach grave by the river. We sped in that direction, running along a narrow dirt path through a rice field. The path ended in a ditch of brown water. With no ford or bridge, we groaned and plowed through the thick mud. I slid down an embankment on my butt. When we arrived at the site, almost 40 bodies had been removed from their house grave and lined up in rows on the ground. Some were wrapped in brightly colored cloths, some were in slender wooden coffins, and some were wrapped in cartoon quilts and blankets. We're talking Hello Kitty, SpongeBob SquarePants, and various Disney characters. The family moved from body to body, deciding whom to unwrap. Some were unknown. Nobody remembered exactly who they were. And some were top priority, a beloved husband or daughter whom they missed and couldn't wait to see again. A mother unwrapped her son, who had died when he was only 16. At first, all that could be seen was a crooked pair of feet. Hands emerged and seemed well enough preserved. Men on either side of the coffin pulled gently on the body, testing to see if they could lift it without the body crumbling. They managed to stand him vertical, and though his torso had been preserved, his face was skeletal, excepting his teeth and thick brown hair. His mother didn't seem to mind. She was ecstatic to see her child, even for a moment, even in this state, and held his hand and touched his face. Nearby, a son brushed the skin of his father, whose face was stained pink from his batik wrapping. "He was a good man," he said. "He had 8 children, but he never beat us. I'm sad, but happy, because I can care for him as he did for me." So This is this place in Indonesia. I don't want to indicate that this happens all throughout Indonesia, because people in major cities like Jakarta think of it like we would think of the snake charmers in the southern churches, like, oh, what's going on there? And what's so powerful about it, though, is that if I said, I need you to keep your mom in your house mummified for years, most of you, even though you're obviously here, so have a good death vocabulary, would probably still go, oh, no, thank you, that's a bit too far for me. But when you're there, it's so normalized. And it feels just like children hanging out, playing, men drinking beers, brushing some mummies, as you would do on a Saturday afternoon. And the thing that I think that we can learn from the people in this region is that we're so afraid of the dead body. And the fact that when someone dies here, even if it's your mother who died under hospice care, and you've watched her die, and she's in your home, when she dies, you're likely to call the funeral home immediately like it's an emergency. Get her out of here, there's a corpse in my house. Whereas these people not only keep the body in the house, they keep it for years. And they sleep in the same room as the body, and they bring food to the body, and they redress the body. And obviously that's too far for Western culture probably to ever go. But certainly it's an example of we don't need to be quite so uptight about how we treat our dead and how we fear our dead. So the second one that I'm going to read is just about as far opposite on the spectrum as you can get, and this is in Tokyo, in Japan. Let me take a sip of water. Oh, I've worked so hard tonight already. Oh my gosh, I'm just sweating. Okay. The Buddhist temple, a 17th century building tucked away off a quiet street in Tokyo, is home to a modest cemetery with aged headstones representing generations of families that came to worship here. Yajima Jushoku means head priest or monk, emerged to greet me, an affable man in a brown robe with close-cropped white hair and glasses. In contrast to his archaic surroundings, Yajima Jushoku is a man of new ideas, specifically how to memorialize cremated remains. My kind of guy. When the temple reached capacity, the priest Yajima could have invested in old-fashioned cemetery space. Instead, 7 years ago, he built the Ruriden Columbarium. Columbaria are separate buildings for the storing of cremated remains. Buddhism has always been state-of-the-art, he explained. It's quite natural to use technology alongside Buddhism. I see no conflict at all. With that, he showed me through the doors of the complex's newest hexagonal building. I stood in the darkness while Yajima punched something into the keypad at the entrance. Moments later, 2,000 floor-to-ceiling Buddhas began to glow and pulse a vivid blue. What? I bleated, stunned and delighted. I had seen photographs of Ruriden, but to be surrounded 360 degrees by the luminous Buddhas was overwhelming. Yajima opened a locked door, and I peeked behind the Buddha walls at 600 sets of bones. Labeled to make it easy to find Miss Kubota-san, he smiled. Each set of cremated remains corresponded to a crystal Buddha on the wall. When a family member comes, they either type in the name of the deceased or pull out a smart card with a chip, similar to the cards used on Tokyo's subways. After the family keys in at the entrance, the walls light up blue, except for one single Buddha shimmering clear white. No need to squint through names trying to find Mom. The white light will guide you straight to her. All of this evolved, said Yajima. For example, we started with a touchpad where you type in your family member's name. One day I saw a very old woman struggling to type a name in, so that's when we got the smart cards. She just has to tap the card and can immediately find her dead person. Yajima headed back to the keypad controller and instructed me to stand in the center of the room. The autumn scene, he announced, and the formation of Buddhas turned yellow and brown with shifting red patches like piles of freshly fallen leaves. Winter scene, and the Buddhas turned to snowdrifts of light blue and white. Shooting star, and the Buddhas turned purple as white spots jumped from Buddha to Buddha like a stop-motion animation of the night sky. This LED light show could have been a Disney production, but there was something in the sophisticated design of the lights that made it feel as though I were being swaddled in a Technicolor womb. The Buddha lights weren't always this elaborate. One of the early visitors to the new facility at Ruriden was a light designer, and she volunteered to create the scenes from different seasons. At first, the lights looked like a Las Vegas show, Yajima laughed. This is not a toy, I said. Too much. We canceled that. As natural as possible, I said. The work is still happening to create that atmosphere, as natural as possible. Yajima invited me for tea inside the temple and offered me a stool, brought out for visiting foreigners. He believed I couldn't endure sitting cross-legged on the floor mats for the duration of tea and conversation. I assured him I absolutely could. I couldn't. My legs fell painfully asleep within the first 3 minutes. I asked Yajima why he had designed Ruriden the way he did, and his response was impassioned. We had to act. We had to do something for Japan. It has fewer children. Japanese people are living longer. The family is supposed to look after your grave, but we don't have enough people to look after everyone's grave. We had to do something for the people left behind. So that's the other thing that I really believe that the U.S. funeral industry could benefit from, which is the embracing of technology. And I don't mean somewhat entry-level things like, we put a QR code on a gravestone, isn't that blowing your mind? But really trying to push the boundaries. Because right now, if you ask an American funeral director what embracing technology means in memorialization, he's going to say, we got a Facebook page for our funeral home. And like, guys, that's not really going to do it. That's not going to blast us into the future. So what I loved about Japan is this mixture of real reverence for the dead body. They sat with the dead body. They washed the dead body. They dressed the dead body. But then they also had these fantastical ideas of what to do with the cremated remains after the cremation. And it was inevitably a cremation because Japan has a 99% cremation rate, which is the highest in the world. So if we can combine less of a fear of the dead body and an embrace of technology, I think that we stand a chance to move forward with our stagnant funeral industry in the United States. So that's my talk for you tonight, and I'd love to do questions, which is my favorite part always. In any case, doesn't have to be about the book, can be about anything. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Connor. That was my friend who started that round of applause, by the way. A plant. Yes, we'll go right here first.
What do you think about having your loved one's ashes turned into like an artificial diamond?
Okay, what do I think about turning my loved one into an artificial diamond? Are they alive at this point, or are they're dead, right? They're cremated remains. Okay. Yeah, dealer's choice. I think that's a wonderful idea. I think it depends on what's meaningful to you. So for me personally, I think I would prefer a lock of hair from my mother or my father, and to put that in jewelry rather than, because the diamond, although I think the diamond is fun because anytime someone, it's not like obvious hair jewelry where someone's like, oh, what's in that? You're like, oh, what a lovely ring. Really, it's dead people. Thank you for, so it's kind of, you can keep it on more of the down low when, yeah, maybe a braid of hair coming on the side, combine it somehow. But I love people thinking about memorialization, because no matter if you love it or someone else loves it, the fact is that you're embracing the process of grief. You're getting involved, you're doing something. You're not putting dad's ashes in the back of the closet. You're doing something physical and ritualistic to transform ashes into something else.
To the hair, it's very close, just like you said, technology.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a technology. All right, do you have any? Yeah, we'll go here.
What can we do on tattoos after death? I've heard some things online, but I'm wondering if it's like a scam, and I'm wondering if actually can do that.
That's a great question. So she's asking about tattoos after death. And so it's about a year ago, I went to the National Funeral Directors Association conference. And that's really like being in the belly of the beast, let me tell you. And it's like a normal expo, except it's caskets and like bedazzled urns and stuff. There was a woman sitting there individually, like bejeweling a big urn. I just watched her in shock. And they had a place there that was I can't remember the name of it, but that's supposed to save your tattoos after death, I went up and talked to him, and the funeral home, the woman was like, we want funeral homes to be our like middlemen. So they would come to your funeral home and you would slice off the tattoo and put it in our special formula and mail it to us, and then we would preserve it for you. And I mean, they're a real company, but I was there with Tanya Marsh, who's basically the funeral home and cemetery law expert in the country. She works at Wake Forest Law School, and she was like, oh, no. There's so many, because each state has something called desecration of corpse laws, which is interesting because your desecration, like the mummification they do in Indonesia would certainly fall under desecration of corpse, but your desecration doesn't look like my desecration. Your cutting off of a tattoo, which could be horrifying, is, it's hard to reconcile that. So she thinks it's not possible. She thinks they're going to really get in trouble with the state laws. I haven't followed up too much exactly on what they're doing now, but there's certainly companies trying to make preserving your tattoos a possibility.
So right now it is.
Right now maybe it is, but you might want to get in there before they shut them down. So I'm sorry, you look very young and vital, so I don't want to speed you up towards the grave. But who knows? By the time you die, it could just be commonplace. So many people have tattoos. So many people are artists who are tattoo artists. They could have a lobby and say, no matter what, we're preserving our canvas at death. Yeah. Over here. Yeah.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
So you speak a lot about the United States and our fear of death and corpses and how it's a taboo subject. Were there any countries or places in your research or travels that even, death was even more taboo than it is? Or were there any places that really surprised you that you thought would be and were,
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was, I talk a lot about the United States' fear of death and the dead body, and did I know of any country, or did I go to any other country where they were even more afraid of the dead body? I think that there are definitely countries that are more afraid of the dead body in a religious sense, but the way that, so even Japan, which now is much more comfortable with the dead body, just 100 years ago, they used to be terrified of the dead body. They thought it was impure, they thought it was corrupted, and they had a series of like 17 rituals that you had to do to decorpsify the corpse, I guess, and a lot of them are very folklore-y and very nice. Like you rub salt around you drink sake after you touch the hand of the corpse. If a cat jumps over the corpse's head, you have to kill the cat or something. They have all of these things about how the dead body is really impure, but they were still really interactive with the dead because of that fear. So you have almost, in cultures that really interact with the dead body, you almost have two sorts of ways to go about it. You're either doing it because you're desperately trying to control this force that is death that you're afraid of, or you're doing it because you embrace this and you think that they're, like in Indonesia, you think they're still alive. And when you speak to them, they can hear you. And when you bring them food or dress them, they appreciate it. And when you visit them, they appreciate it. So you have these two models, but what's incredibly rare is the US's version of just, I don't want to see it, pick it up immediately, take it away, bring it back to your facility cremate it, maybe give me the ashes. That kind of just distance from the body. So you do have places that are more afraid of the body, but they still end up being very connected to the body because they have to neutralize it before it's okay. That's a great question, though. Thank you. Yeah, I'll go here, and then I'll do some in the back.
So you bring up the incorporating of technology in the U.S. funeral death. But to me, it seems that a lot of the technologic advances are kind of why we shy away from it, because we can prolong life. We can put, the dead in a hospital or the dying in a hospital. So what do you think is the reconciliation between technology as the barrier versus technology as the conduit?
That's also a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. I'll repeat it for the back. But the question was, you're talking about integrating technology, but isn't technology what's, in a sense, keeping us away from death, prolonging life, something like transhumanism or extending life, or just all of these things that, maybe we're not with the dead body as much because we have all of these barriers. I felt very much like that for a long time, and I think I still do. If I had my magical death universe, you would shut off all technology, all cell phones, and exist in a magical pod with your dead body for 6 days, and you'd emerge, healed of your grief. Like if I had my magic death world, that was what it would look like. But that's just not the reality that we live in. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, the selfies at funerals controversy. It was a guy did a website full of people who had taken pictures of themselves, mostly teenagers, on Tumblr at their family's funeral on social media. And every once in a while it would be a really disrespectful one, like, it's me and grandma in the casket. But for the most part, it was just like, I'm in the car on the way to the funeral. And I wrote a piece that defended these teenagers, and people were really angry with me about it. People were like, bad take, Caitlin. I respected you, but not now. And the reason I defended them is because you made these kids grow up with all of this technology. This is their world. Why wouldn't they Snapchat what they're doing, whether it's going to a concert or going to grandma's funeral? They're going to update their friends and put it on social media, and in a way, it's how they're mourning. They're saying they're going to grandma's funeral, and their friends would say, oh my God, I had no idea your grandma died. I'm so sorry. So it didn't seem to me automatically this horrible thing that these selfish teenagers were doing. And we exist in this world of technology. So, yeah, I wish that everyone's Facebook page magically disappeared when they died, but it doesn't. And sometimes 2 years later, you get a notification saying, like, do you want to wish so-and-so a happy birthday? And it's like, no, she died 2 years ago. She doesn't have a birthday anymore. She still has a birthday, but a memorialized birthday. So I think that we have to reconcile the fact that we do have technology. We have to reconcile that we are extending life. Do I like it? No, but we have to have that open conversation about it. So I think really where I want to encourage technology is in the memorialization. I don't want more technology around end of life because I think we have more than enough life extension technology as it is. But I would love to see, like these funeral homes and like these columbarium, if you had a video outside the columbarium wall where someone told a story about their life that they recorded before they died, would that get more butts in the seats? Would that get more people to visit, and interact with death in that way? So for me, technology is a method to get people more involved in death, and we just have to be careful about how we use it. But that's also a great question. Does anyone in the back want to do? I feel like I've been catering to the front. Yes, the way back there.
What do we, as non-death care professionals, what is in our power to do to help demand or change or in some way influence the future of death care in the United States?
That's another great question. What do people who are not death care professionals do to demand change in the future of death care in the United States? You guys are so smart. What a smart Los Angeles group. So first of all, think about what you're good at. This is what I always say, and that sounds kind of simple, but like, what is it that you love to do and have experience in? Are you already a big social media person? If so, share all this information on social media. Do you work for a nonprofit? Do you know how to get grants for people who are working in this area? Are you an artist? Do you know how to make a film or an art piece that showcases this? Do what you're already doing and what you're already good at. Just put a deathy slant on it to educate people. And I think the number one thing is that the more that you know and the more that you care about this information and you know how to talk to a funeral director and you know how to demand a direct cremation for the least cost if that's what a family needs, or you know how to tell people that it's safe and legal to keep a body at home. What I think is we don't necessarily need more death care professionals, although we do. What we need is people in each community who are able to spread that information around and be the person in your community that if someone, or your family, that if someone dies, they know that you are the one who has the good information. They know that you're the one who can talk to them on the phone when someone dies. They can even go in the funeral home with them. They'll come tell you a little bit about your options. You're just like, in lots of villages, it's an older person, it's a wise person, but we don't really have that here. We have older, wiser people in our community, but they've never been taught anything about death care, and they're the ones who are most likely to be taken advantage of when the time comes. So just be the person in your community who really knows this information, and that, so many people just aren't even comfortable saying death's name. So even if I just had my good friend and former roommate, her dad died in this really tragic way, and she came to visit and we were talking and she was so grateful, and I actually didn't give her any advice. I didn't say anything. I just was willing to listen to whatever, she was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm saying all these things, and I was like, yeah, sounds totally normal to me, and the fact that I could be neutral and accepting of those feelings was good enough. So just be that person in your community, and I promise that will go a long way. Cool. We'll do here. Hi.
Just out of curiosity, when did you start to fully embrace the every attribute of death, just the thought of death?
When did I start to fully embrace death? I don't know that anybody can ever fully embrace death. I think that, but I'm going to continue on with that answer because that's also a good question. There's, I think that if anybody tells you that they're fully accepting of death, I don't know that I believe them. So, does anybody know this guy who's like, oh, you're into all that death stuff? Well, when I die, just put me in the trash, or I don't care what's done with my body. I've just been the type of person who never was really concerned about death. I'm if you really are someone who doesn't fear death, it's usually people who have faced the deep darkness of death and stood at the foot of the mountain and faced their big existential scary fears, and then they come out of it and they say, yeah, that was really awful and that was really scary, but I now see death in a different way and I can accept it into my heart. And one of the reasons that I think that accepting your death and working on that is so important is that when someone I know dies now, it's not that I'm not mourning and that I'm not really sad and that it doesn't throw me off, but I no longer am thinking, am I going to die? What does this mean? Am I going to die someday? What does death mean? We're all going to die. Because I've already had those thoughts and I've moved through those thoughts. And you have to update them too. Every time you meet someone and get in a relationship, or you have a child, or something changes in your life, you have to update your relationship with death, because death will sneak in some new insidious way. So I wouldn't say that I've totally accepted it, but I just make it a practice that is really valuable to me and valuable for my mental health and valuable for me carrying on. So as long as the fact that you're even here right now and thinking about it is awesome, and you're well on your way. Yeah, back there. Hi.
This is not much of a question, it's more of an interview.
Oh.
From one animal to another. My dog died about 2 months ago. And
Oh, thank you. Rest in peace, Meow. What was your dog's name? Matisse. Oh, that's a classy dog name. Yeah, grief is grief. I did a talk recently about animal memorialization and grief, and I had one person, and I think this was an outlier, come up at the end and go, well, do you really think animal grief is as important as human grief? And my thought on that is like, it's a really kind of privileged position to be like, all my friends are amazing humans and we have all the best time. You know, for a lot of people, whether it's just your personality type or you're older or you're disabled or whatever it is, your dog or your cat is your whole world. And you love, I mean, I loved my cat a lot more than I love most people. So I get it. And it's very, very fair that you grieve for your animal just as long as you grieve for any human. And animals are amazing because they show us the possibility. You know, you can have a wake and a natural burial and all these cool things for your animal. That's much harder to accomplish for a human. So let your animals be your guide into something greater for death. Yes, right there, young lady. Oh, what does embalming mean? Well, you've asked one of my favorite questions. What does embalming mean? A book for children. So embalming is something that we started to do, and I don't think it's really that necessary for us to do it. But what it is after you die, they take the blood out of your body and they replace it with a chemical. And what that does is it makes you stiff, even stiffer, and it stops the proteins in your body from decaying, and it makes you stay fresher longer. But my idea is that if you're just going to put the body in the ground and you want it to be, you know, in the ground and in the dirt, or if you want to cremate it, why would you try and preserve it like that? And I also think, my personal opinion, I'm not going to stop you from choosing embalming. I don't know if you're going to have to choose it anytime soon. If anybody's going to be like, you, young lady, do we want to embalm this body? But if anybody asks you, what you can say is, you know, sometimes a natural dead body is really lovely. You know, we have this idea that a dead body is gross or scary, but when someone dies, in a lot of these cultures that I went to, you can see a beautiful dead body, and they just look like they're sleeping, and they're just so lovely, and it's a little aggressive, and I think that when most people choose it, they don't really know what it means. So that's a really good question, and I hope you keep asking all the death questions and that you become a very death-positive adult and you're already well on your way. Cool. Yeah, right in the middle? We'll do you and then you. Yeah. You first and then you. So, yeah, the front one and then the back one.
Was there any ritual or ceremony that you wanted to cover that country didn't welcome the exposure or didn't welcome the American?
Yeah, that's a great question. Is there anything that I wanted to cover that the country didn't want me to come or they wouldn't welcome an American? There's nothing that I tried to do that they said no, but there are things that I self-regulated on. So the big example is a Tibetan sky burial. That's what I want for myself, if I could. I would want the vultures to come down and eat my body, and God, would I love to see it actually happen. But I read story after story of, it's especially Chinese tourists that they have an issue with in Tibet, but also Western tourists and American tourists who come in with their iPhones and film it. There's one terrible story that I think I put in the book about a man who wants to get like high-res photographs of it, and this was a Western guy, and he climbs up on the mountain, but it's the mountainside, but it's where the vultures usually waited, so they didn't have anywhere to wait, so they just didn't show up. So the body just laid there, which is so inauspicious, like bad if the vultures don't show up for your sky burial. And it was because this guy was like hiding behind the rocks on this hillside with his camera. And I think I did put it in the book because I remember I wrote, like, if I was ever that guy, I would just have to lay myself out for the vultures because I would be so horrified and so embarrassed. And I have to accept that unless I'm specifically invited by some Buddhist organization and I have that respectful access that I had elsewhere, I'm not going to be able to see it in my lifetime, and that's fine. Not everything is for me. You know, not everything is open to me, and nor should it be. Yes, and behind you, yeah.
Do you think the growing prevalence of ego death could affect
Oh, I love that question too. Oh, I'm loving these questions. So the question was, do you think that people embracing the green death movement could affect how people see themselves as part of the environment and thus climate change? So I've said before that, do I think burying people in a hole in the ground is going to solve our climate problems? No. I don't think that we have that kind of direct one-to-one power. It's not like the natural gas of a cremation is why we have these problems. But I think that it's a mental shift. It's a really profound mental shift where, I'm not a religious person, but when I think about going into the ground and I think about decomposing into the earth, that seems spiritual to me. That seems like a religion to me. And I love thinking of myself as organic matter, as a sack of organic matter that came from the earth and needs to go back to the earth when I'm done. And I think that if more people really believed that, they saw themselves as future compost or future part of the earth, that it would be a real shift in how they see their relationship to the world around them and to the climate and to Gaia, or however you want to call it. So I absolutely do hope that that is part of the mental shift that happens with more of a connection with green death. Yeah. One more? Okay. We're getting cut off. Let's do one more question. And then I'm also going to be here for however long you'd like. Yes, we'll do right there. Oh, sorry. We'll go after. Yeah.
You're Indonesian, the bodies of hope. Do they do anything to preserve them? Fluids inside? I mean,
yeah.
All these questions.
That's a great question.
How they keep them.
Yeah, so you were asking about, we're talking about embalming, what do they do with these bodies? They're kept in the home in Indonesia. How do they preserve them? So the old way of doing it was tea leaves and tannins and almost like leather is produced. They would leatherize the body. And now, because they're so busy and even modernity is coming to this rural area, they have a guy who has like little bottles of formaldehyde and formalin like an American embalmer would have, and they come just stick the bodies with it. But they're still mummified. And the thing is, when I'm looking at these bodies, what I'm not thinking is, oh, you're embalming too. Like, maybe I don't like it. I'm thinking, great idea to embalm them because you plan to keep them around for years. Like, oh yeah, you definitely want to preserve or mummify the body if you want it to be around as long as possible. And 6 years later, you want to take it out of the grave and clean it. That's a great idea. But why do we do that if we don't do that? You know what I mean? Like, we're taking the body, we're chemically embalming it and preserving it, and then we're putting it in this underground fortress with a casket and a vault and everything underground, ne'er to be seen again. Why are we going through all that if we're not bringing the body out? So, we've been doing it, well, really more like 150 years, but yeah, we've been doing it for a long time, and it just doesn't make sense in the way that it makes perfect sense if you're in this Indonesian village. So that's also a fantastic question. Thank you so much, everyone. You're awesome. You want to talk about the signing? Okay.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.